Welcome back to Space or Live Thursday Night Talks. If you're joining us live, thank you once again so much for joining us. Tonight in the house, we have Sarah Cruddas. Hello, Sarah, how are you?
Hi, welcome to my spare room, Peak 2020, broadcasting live from living rooms and bedrooms across the country. Thank you so much for having me. I love Space Store. I'm so excited about what you're doing. So thank you for involving me in one of your live chats. I'm really excited to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Just for our audience, Sarah is a space journalist. She's actually been on international TV and she's also an award-winning author. And tonight we're going to be talking about her latest book, Look Up. What is this book about, Sarah?
Yeah, so my book, Look Up, Our Story with the Stars, and I have to also shout out to Michael Collins, Apollo 11 astronaut, who wrote the foreword for the book. I mean, you can't get a bigger honour than that. Yeah. Charles Lindbergh wrote the foreword for Carrying the Fire, Michael Collins' book, and now Michael Collins has written the foreword for Look Up, the Story with the Stars, which is my book, and I feel like that's quite an impressive lineage to be in, and I'm completely honoured to Michael, so we have to give a huge shout out to him and all the astronauts that made Our Story with the Stars possible. So this book is my fourth book, and I was super lucky with my publishers HQ at HarperCollins, and they said write what you like, so I was able to just write about my love of space. So this is the story of how we got to space and why, you know, the curiosity which has driven human throughout history to get to this point where we could actually no longer just look up at the stars but actually reach for the stars and begin to explore them. And then it's a story of how we got to now, so how we've got to this world of cyberspace, you know, world full of cell phones. You know, we got Deliveroo, generation dreamed of jetpacks, but instead we got Deliveroo in this world we live in today. And then it's where we're heading in our space future and how space is set to transform us in the future, and all the great things to come, the things that we can't even begin to imagine, which is why space is so exciting. And weaved into that as well, we've got stories of dedication, determination, and sacrifice, the human stories behind space exploration, because I think it's by learning about humans and by learning about not just our space explorers, but people within the space industry and the sacrifice that they're willing to put in, that we can realize the value in which they're chasing and why space is so important. And then finally, the book is about, the book concludes with Earth and looking back, and how actually the greatest thing to come from space exploration is all of us, because no matter where we go in space and what we do, we so far haven't found anywhere like Earth, and it's likely we'll never find anywhere exactly like Earth. And you know, the greatest thing to come from space exploration is a realization that we're this fragile, blue, precious marble in the vastness of the universe, and we're all in this together. And in a year when we're often feeling quite divided, in space we are all united as citizens of one planet. So it's a real mashup of my passion for space, and I just want to inspire as many people as possible from all walks of life that space is for them. You know, space is for you, and to access space, all you need to do is look up and wonder and dream. And what better time here in the UK when we're in lockdown at the moment than to just look out of your window, or if you've got a garden, go outside and look up at the night sky and just feel smallness and wonder and awe of what it is that we're a part of, because space exploration is as much as about philosophy and a search for meaning as it is about science and technology.
Great, and we absolutely love speaking to space lovers here on Space Door Live. And that thing, what you said, was it is as much as about philosophy as it is science. That really hits home, because it's all about connecting with a diverse audience, and it just so aligns really well with what we believe here at Space Door. That it is actually for anyone, whether you're like a young teenager at school, or if you're in your 60s, space is for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've written 3 children's books. This Look Up, Our Story with the Stars, which is here, of course, it's my first adult title. And so often we think about inspiring kids, inspiring the next generation about space. But actually, if we're going to succeed in becoming a multiplanetary species, and it's talked like that, which sounds like science fiction, like it's beyond reality, but it's where we're heading, then we need to have every single person on board. We can't afford to leave anyone behind. So yes, of course we need to inspire the next generation. They're our future, they're our Mars walkers, they're going to do things we can't even imagine yet. But at the same time, everyone else, you know, whether you're a house husband in Leeds or a woman in the village in India, if they aren't on board with this, then we're doing a disservice to humanity, because we need to communicate the value of space exploration, and scientists have a responsibility to do that. So we need to communicate why space matters, and we need to inspire people, because all of us, I don't care what your interests are, what your background is, all of us have hopes and dreams, and all of us search for meaning at some point in our life. And space trying to answer profound questions such as why do we exist? Where did we come from? Where are we heading as a species? That's what space is trying to do. So the more people we can inspire and get excited about space, that's a good thing for humanity as well as for the space industry.
So who would you say the book is for then?
For anyone who's ever... Sorry?
When you were writing the book, who was kind of your audience?
Anyone who's ever looked up and wondered. Because
wow.
the book's not a technical book, so it's not for, well, it is as well, because space fans are always going to want to read a book about space, but I also want to hook in someone who might not have thought about space as well. But I want it to be for the average person on the street. So I grew up in Hull in the north of England. I grew up on benefits. I was the first in my family to go to university, and space inspired me. Space taught me to reach for the impossible, and that, the sky is no longer the limit. That is that cliche with space. So I want this book to be for anyone who's curious, anyone who's ever looked up and wondered, anyone who's ever searched for meaning in their life, and wants to be, in a difficult year, in a year which has been hard for so many. I think space and science can give us value and have shown their meaning certainly this year. So anyone who's in search of inspiration or wanderlust, this book is for them. So I know that's quite a broad audience spectrum, but we need meaning right now. We need hope, and space gives us hope.
That's great. And we've, as I said to the audience, we've actually had a question coming already from YouTube, and it's a question from another Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Great name.
And she's asking, how did you go from scientist to journalist?
It's a great question. So I studied astrophysics. My plan was always to do a PhD. I wanted to become an astronaut. And then I was at university, and I think it was at the end of my second year of university, and I went traveling around South America on my credit card, as you do as a student. And I saw things I'd never seen before. I saw poverty like I'd never seen before in parts of Brazil, Bolivia, Uruguay, Argentina, just another side of the world that I never really experienced or never really thought about. And that trip profoundly changed me. Because I wanted to show people the world. I wanted to tell people stories about the world. And my fear was I love science and I love talking about science, but my fear was maybe I wasn't cut out for academia. So I actually, I never did a PhD in the end. So I just did a degree. And then I started working unpaid at my local BBC radio station while I was finishing up at university. And that turned into paid work. And then I did a postgrad in broadcast journalism. And then I needed a job, and I got a job as a weather presenter with BBC TV, Look North, but it wasn't really my dream. There's nothing wrong with being a weather presenter, but it wasn't my dream. My dream was space exploration still. And then in this job was straight out of university. And then in 2010, I interviewed a British astronaut who had become an American called Piers Sellers. And I interviewed him down at the Royal Society because he'd just taken bark from Sir Isaac Newton's apple tree into space. And I would work breakfast television shifts, and then in my afternoons go and try and find space stories to sell back to the BBC. And it was mostly the overnight radio shows that take my pieces at this point. And I went to interview Piers Sellers, and he just inspired me huge. And I was just like, I need to follow space full time. This is my dream. If you don't know about Piers Sellers, look him up. I talk about him in the book as well. He's in the world needs more people like Piers. Tragically, he died in 2016 of cancer, but his legacy still lives on. So I was hugely inspired by Piers. The following year, I took leave from the BBC and went out to NASA and sold back stories from Atlantis STS-135, which is the final space shuttle launch. And then I decided I needed to take a risk and I needed to follow my dream to space. And I left the BBC, came down to London, and then failed a lot because often you fail in life and you have to keep going. It's often our failures and how we react to them that define us. So failed a lot in television, and then started getting really interested in commercial space, the private space sector, giving talks out in America, traveling around the world. It all kind of spiraled. Then I went to Hollywood and got a TV show in the US. So I've kind of had this weird kind of like, I always shoot higher. When I was struggling in television in England, I decided to go to America instead, and it worked out on that occasion. So that's kind of the long story, but it's my love of telling stories and the world. I love traveling. Travel is in my DNA, and it's that curiosity that most of us have, which is eventually taking human beings to space. So it was kind of a mishmash of a career, but it's, I was never going to be the best scientist in the world, but I feel like I'm pretty good at communicating about space. And my life is so short, this is it, we don't, it isn't a dress rehearsal, we've got to follow our dreams, we've got to do what we love. And I just wanted to, my gift, I guess, to humanity is I want to be a tiny, tiny, tiny part, or play a tiny part in helping humans leave Earth permanently and go out and step forth into the vastness of the universe and extend where we can exist. And if my role is inspiring people and telling great stories, then that's a huge honor. So it's a convoluted path, but it's just you've got to follow your passions. You don't have to love space exploration, for example. You can love whatever you love, but you've just got to follow your dreams. And also, nothing's ever easy. Like, my career path hasn't been easy, most people's haven't, but yeah, that is how I went from studying astrophysics to doing what I do now, in a pretty short story. I can talk for England, I do apologize.
I'm sure everyone tuning is absolutely loving it to hear your story. And it just shows, like, you never kind of go where you plan to go to. It's just, you've got to do something, and then just keep doing work, keep doing stuff that inspires you, do stuff you enjoy, and you're gonna end up somewhere, and you're gonna love it.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter if you fail, and you shouldn't. You've just got to keep going. I mean, I've had some incredible highs. I got to speak at Bill Gates' house with Jeff Bezos to people like Rex Tillerson and Justin Trudeau and all these world leaders about space exploration and how we go forward in this new part of space exploration. But I've also had times when I struggled, when I first went freelance and left the BBC and was like, how do I pay my rent? Nothing comes easy. But it's about, nothing's impossible. You've just got to go for it, and you shouldn't limit yourself. Sometimes I feel like maybe it's a very British thing as well. We limit ourselves to what we can achieve, and we don't dream big enough. But this is why I included the human element of space exploration in my book, because astronauts teach us to dream the impossible and go out and make it happen. Astronauts are just ordinary people like you and I who've done extraordinary things. And I think what you can take from their stories is a driving force of what you can achieve. If one human can achieve it, so can you. If you can. So one person like Gus Grissom, for example, who I write about in the book, who went from like this Midwestern boy growing up in poverty, flipping burgers for 30 hours a week while he was at college, to being the second American in space, being the first person to command the Gemini missions, and then tragically losing his life in Apollo 1, but enabling so much success for human spaceflight. I mean, that story of determination and guts is incredible. And I think we need to listen to those stories of people who've done the extraordinary, and then we can take it to our own lives and use it as our own driving force to push forward. And this year's hard. I'm not going to pretend I've had a great time this year. Many people haven't had a great time this year, but space gives me hope, and the possibilities and the wonders to come from space gives me hope.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's all about being limitless and understanding that there's no end to what you can achieve. And I think it is, as if for our UK audience listening, I think that is a little bit part of the British culture where we limit ourselves. But this is in fact your fourth book, right? After Find Out Solar System, Do You Know About Space, The Space Race, The Journey to the Moon and Beyond. Now we've got Look Up, Our Stories with the Stars. So what has kind of inspired you to keep on giving?
Keep on giving. I need to pay bills. So funnily enough, I had an agent who told me I wouldn't be able to write a book, so I wrote one, and then it's kind of spiraled, and I've done 4. Books are hard work. Like, writing my first adult's title has been a huge challenge. I've done 3 children's books, and don't get me wrong, they're difficult, but crafting an adult's book, like, I'm a scientist by background. I'm not an English graduate or anything like that. It's difficult and it's lonely work, but I just wanted to inspire people about space. I think 4's enough right now. I'd love to maybe do a book in maybe 10 years time, another book in maybe 10 years time, but it's just that I had such a hard time writing this book. I remember this time last year, I was working in Kazakhstan, giving talks at a space event out there exactly this time last year. And I remember I had like 2 spare days in Kazakhstan, and I just had to sit in my hotel room and write this book. And I remember being so angry, I threw my laptop on my bed because I just couldn't tell the story I wanted to tell. But so it is frustrating and it is difficult, but it's about, I've worked with a lot of astronauts, and one thing which always sticks in my mind is the difference between legacy and impact. And a lot of people want to leave a legacy in the world, but actually what we should be focusing on is impact and how we can change the world. So that's less self-centered. And I think for me, writing books, it's about that impact you can have, that spark. You don't know who you're going to inspire. I don't care whether you're 66, 106 or 6, you don't know who you're going to inspire, and it makes what you're doing worthwhile. And it just, and also, like, what I do isn't a real job. I'm so grateful for all the opportunities I have. Like, I get to talk about space and write about space, and most of the time live my dream. Like, sometimes social media annoys me, but I do it. Like, but I'm so grateful for that. So I'm not pretending it's easy. I'm not pretending writing a book is super hard. And it's frustrating, and it's difficult, but it's that finished project, and it's that sense of pride and achievement, and it's just that, what impact can you have on the world? And I remember working with the late astronaut Gene Cernan. Of course, we all know Gene Cernan was the last man to walk on the surface of the moon. And I worked on a movie about his life called Last Man on the Moon. Incredible documentary. If you haven't watched it, 100% go out and watch it, be inspired. But one thing is that his story was that he grew up and he used to go to his grandparents' farm where they had no electricity, and then he walked on the moon. And the closing statement of that movie, and when he would give talks when we were touring with the movie, was, "I walked on the moon. What can't you do?" And being an astronaut's hard. It requires dedication, determination, and sacrifice, as does writing a book, as does many things. But it's about how what you want to do with your short time on this earth.
Yeah, that's great. That's so inspiring. We've actually had another question in from Dave in Ledbury. Welcome, Dave. Thank you for tuning in.
Hi, Dave.
And he says, Sarah is a very inspirational and a great presenter. Can you ask if she has any plans to try to present any programs about space in the UK?
That is a great question. Maybe it is an interesting market at the moment because of a lockdown. So I was filming for the first time yesterday in the UK, but it was actually for a US show. But I think the UK has or is doing some incredible stuff in space exploration, and maybe the UK doesn't shout about it in the way that other countries do. But there's certainly a growing momentum in the UK, and if the right opportunity came along, I would love to do some stuff in the UK, just inspiring people about space. And I think 2020 is hard, but I feel pretty confident and optimistic that come spring 2021 things are going to get better. And I would love to reach a bigger audience in the UK and just inspire as many people as possible. And thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate them as well, Dave.
Awesome. Another question in.
I love this. Thank you for all your questions.
It's you. I think it's Dave again.
Hi again, Dave.
So many amazing accomplishments, but you mentioned failures. Can you give us an example of the failure? Oh no, this is Steve. Sorry.
Oh, Steve. Sorry, Dave. Hi, Steve.
Example of a failure you experienced and what you learned from that experience to support your successes.
That's a great. I got rejected from a big TV job in the UK about 5 years ago. I was devastated. I thought my career was over, and like for 2 months I just didn't know what to do with myself, and then I just kept going. I didn't do the best academically in my postgrad. I remember when I first started freelancing, I would apply for jobs reading the news on BBC Radio, and everyone would reject me. And I kept on going, and then I got this weather presenter's job, and then I would keep, I wanted to do science stories, but I remember being told by, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I remember being told by the editor of my regional TV station that I wasn't good enough to be on the 6:30 bulletin at my regional TV station, so I had to do breakfast television. And I just ignored it, and I kept going, and I kept selling these space stories. And every time someone's told me I'm not good enough, so for example, when I didn't get an opportunity on television in the UK back in 2015, I kept going, and then I went to Hollywood, and I think there's a lot of failure in television. There's a lot of rejection. You only ever see people's successes, but you don't see the hard work. You don't see the I quit a good job at the BBC and went freelance with nothing, and I just built things up from scratch, and I didn't know what was going to happen. There's lots of failures, lots of disappointment, going to countless screen tests, pitching countless television shows and getting rejected because your hair's the wrong color or your accent's slightly wrong, or they want someone to look like this or that, or it's not right and you believe in your idea but they don't. It's a hard industry. Television is nearly as hard as rocket science, I feel, but you just gotta keep on going. I just think don't get me wrong, I would say I'm like an optimistic pessimist, because everyone has this roller coaster of emotions that is life. But I think if you have a dream, you've just got to follow it. I don't care what your dream is, just follow it, just keep going, and know that when you have hard times, that they will ease. And also when you have good times, like 2019 was the best year of my life. I was flying around the world, bought a house, had a TV series in the US, did 85 international trips, wrote the space race, launched the space race to space, started writing Look Up, and then 2020 happened and loads of work disappeared, and I was just like back in London all of a sudden, in this world I had just gone overnight, and now it's hopefully starting to come back. And you've just got to ride the roller coaster, I get, and not be too hard on yourself. I feel like I give the longest answers to all the questions, but I hope that answered the question for Steve.
Oh, that's great. That's great. We've actually had Brooke Edwards. Thank you for tuning
Hi, Brooke.
saying, thank you, Sarah. This is the inspiration I needed today.
Oh, thank you so much. I keep going, Brooke.
That's great. I'm actually really enjoying talking to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm glad we're inspiring so many people tuning in. And if you're watching this on catch up, if you have any questions for Sarah, because obviously you missed the live, let us know in the comment section under the YouTube video, and maybe we can get in touch with Sarah after this talk. If you have any questions, we'll try and get back to you in the comment section.
Of course, and you can tweet me. I'm at Sarah Cruddas on Twitter, and I'm at Sarah Cruddas TV on Instagram, because Sarah Cruddas isn't exactly a popular name, but someone managed to get Sarah Cruddas on Instagram before I did. So at Sarah Cruddas on Twitter and at Sarah Cruddas TV on Instagram, and send me your questions in. I try and respond to people all the time, but sometimes I get sick of social media and delete the apps. But I do always try and come back to people. But yeah, I really appreciate your questions, and I appreciate this is a tough year for so many people. But I hope I hope you, after listening to this, whenever you watch this, that you can go outside or even just open your window. I live in a flat, I haven't got a garden. Just open the window, look up at the night sky and feel inspired. Because one thing I love about space, and one of my favorite space facts, is that for pretty much every single planet you can see every single star you can see when you look up at the night sky, there's at least one planet orbiting around it. There are more planets than stars in our universe. And to think, when you're looking up and seeing those stars, you're seeing potentially other solar systems, other worlds. There could be someone or something out there in that vast, impossible cosmos, looking up from their world and looking back and looking at us and seeing our sun as a star in their night sky, and wondering the same things you wonder. And that just blows my mind. Space always gives me hope, and the vastness and the wonder of the universe always gives me hope.
Yeah, no, it genuinely blows my mind as well. And you sum it up so well, that someone somewhere could be looking up at our sun and wondering what is there.
I know, we just don't know what's to come. Like, one of my my favorite things, so I'm involved with SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence in the US. Great organization. The movie Contact was actually based on Jewel Tata, who's a lady who still works at SETI right now. But they're talking about within the next few decades, we could answer the question of, are we alone or not in the universe? Like, it might be microbial life on Mars, or some sort of alien fish in Enceladus or Europa, which are moons of the planets Jupiter and Saturn and Jupiter. But how will that change humanity if we find a second Genesis? So if we prove there's life elsewhere within our relatively average solar system, and that life is independent of Earth, so that life wasn't seeded. For example, if we find life on Mars, it could actually be linked to life on Earth. We may actually, in fact, be the Martians we're looking for. But if we find life on Europa, for example, the icy moon of Jupiter with this possible liquid ocean, and we've proved that life is separate to life on Earth, it's not related to us, and then you've got two Genesises in a one average solar system. And then we know for pretty much every star you see in the night sky, there's at least one planet orbiting around it. We know there's gazillions of solar systems out there. You can't begin to imagine what is to come. And that's what I just love it so much. How can you not love that? How can you not feel hopeful, I guess, and wonder about what else could be out there? So it's so much exciting stuff is going to come in space exploration, and all the stuff we can't imagine will come in the next few decades. I mean, if you were to go back to the year 1900 and interrupt if you want to ask questions, I realize I do talk a lot, but if you were to go back to the year 1900 and you were born in the year 1900 and you lived 100 years, so you died in the year 2000, you had a long lifespan, but still within the range of human lifespan. Look at what's happened within that lifetime. You've seen the first flight, you know, the Wright brothers, just a flight for a matter of seconds. You've then seen like commercial aviation taking off. You've seen 2 horrific world wars, but the progress they brought with that in terms of technology. And then you've seen more ordinary people be able to fly across the Atlantic, so no longer a journey by ship, which takes days, but something which could be completed in hours. Then you've seen humans go to space, humans on the moon. You've seen the internet, cyberspace, things we've never imagined. And that's just in one human lifetime. And we know technology is increasing exponentially. So just imagine what is to come in the next 100 years. We can't imagine it. And that's so exciting.
Yeah. No, it's kind of the thing I use with any one of my friends who are kind of not that passionate about space. Is like, do you realize the extent of the universe? And it's I understand it's not something you can quite easily understand, like how big the universe is and the fact that it's constantly expanding. It's crazy. And to think that surely there must be something out there, whether it's another life form or it's another level of intelligence that we can't even quite understand yet.
Yeah.
Truly, it's fascinating. And I urge anyone listening to this who's vaguely interested in space to go out and type in how big the universe is. And it's the numbers you come across, it's hard to understand. And you realize how small we are. Anyway, before we get too philosophical, there's a question.
No, I love it. I love how your passion's coming out. This is what I love. Like, you know, you're just as passionate as me. I love it. I just love, like, yeah, I love that intersection. You know, space is as much about religion and philosophy as it is about science and technology. And it is just a search for meaning and it's hope. And we all need this in this weird year.
Because you do sometimes realize your conversations can easily take the religious or the philosophical aspect and like, it still makes sense.
Yeah, we don't know. We know so little. We're literally only just beginning to scratch the surface. But all of us, everyone watching this, we're the privileged ones because I know it doesn't seem like it, but we're living in the best time. You know, humanity is the most advanced it's ever been. And throughout history, humans looked up at the stars and wondered, but we're the first ones who don't only look up at the stars, but we can see human-made stars now. You know, you can see satellites in orbit benefiting life on Earth. You can see the International Space Station where people have lived for 2 decades, you know, not just learning how to live in space, but learning how to use space to improve life for all of us on Earth. So we're the ones living at a time where space is no longer a dream, an impossible dream, but it's our reality. So we just need to hold on to that and how much exciting stuff is to come. Yeah. I could talk for hours about space. That's why I wrote a book.
I mean, I'd love to talk, but there's a question coming in from Leah.
Hi, Leah.
She's asking, can you tell us about any of your projects coming up?
Yeah, exciting. So I'm going to be, I don't know whether I can announce this yet, but I'm going to be starting a podcast. So I've signed the contract for it, but I can't tell you what the title is or anything about it just yet, but hopefully it'll be released either December or January. It's going to be a space science themed podcast. This is an exclusive for the Space Store and for you, Leah. So yeah, that is my next project. I love radio. I love talking. It means you don't have to brush your hair as well, because when there's a camera in front of you, you have to get ready. But radio, you can just like I had sweats on an hour ago, and I had to like comb my hair, put makeup on to do this. Yeah, so I'm super excited about that. I'll be revealing more details on my social channels in the coming weeks. I've got a great production team behind me on this. Like, I'm so excited to have a producer and an assistant producer. I feel like I'm not worthy. And it's an all-female team as well, which I love. So that is my exciting next project. And then next year, I'm optimistic that the world will start to improve and I will hopefully have some more international projects. So yeah, exciting news and exclusive for you guys.
It is exclusive. So you heard it here first. Sarah Cruddas is starting a podcast. I'm super excited. What is it going to be about?
Space.
I know you can't give away too much. But
I can't give away too much, but I will be announcing stuff on my social media channels. So Sarah Cruddas on Twitter and Sarah Cruddas TV on Instagram. And I'll be announcing details in the coming weeks.
Yeah, so go follow up. And I'm sure we'll be shouting about it on Space Store social media channels as well. Awesome. To make sure we get everyone listening to that when it's out. Ground-Based Space, another one of our long-term listeners on YouTube.
Hi, Ground-Based Space.
Asking, in all the work you've done involving space and the space industry, do you have a favorite space organization or mission? Actually, what's your favorite space organization? Then we'll go to what's your favorite space mission.
Oh, see, I'm going to give like a space organization. I'm going to be super biased here. So I sit on the board of directors of a US nonprofit called Space for Humanity. And if you don't know about Space for Humanity, you can go to Space for Humanity, spaceforhumanity.org and check them out. They're also all over Instagram and Twitter as well. And they are a non-profit founded by an incredible friend of mine called Dylan Taylor, who's just this tour de force in terms of commercial space industry. And we've got some great people on the board. We've got Buzz Aldrin's son, Andy Aldrin. We've got astronauts such as Michael Lopez Alegria, who's involved as an advisor. Incredible people on board. And the mission of Space for Humanity is to democratize access to space. Because often when I talk about space exploration, or when we talk about space exploration, we draw this comparison with aviation 100 years ago, and how like individuals go first and then the wealthy and then everyone else kind of follows. That analogy stops when we talk about space, because if we're to succeed as a species, going to space shouldn't just be for the elite, you know, for military personnel or scientists, and it shouldn't just be for the uber wealthy who'll be able to afford these commercial flights, which are happening in the next decade or so, you know, over the next decade or so. So the Space for Humanity is a non-profit dedicated to sending anyone from any walk of life into space. So you can apply via their website and they will fully fund, their aim is to fully fund 10,000 commercial trips to space. Because if we're to succeed as a species, we need to send people from all walks of life into space. We need to do that. And we also need them to come back to Earth, obviously, and we need them to go back to their communities and explain why space exploration matters. Because you mentioned how when you know, explaining your love of space to your friends, but imagine if one of your space hating friends went to space and they got to look back and they got to see the Earth. How would that change them? You know, we've sent military personnel to space, and they, you know, one of the moonwalkers came back a priest. Edgar Mitchell came back and trained to be a priest, and Al Bean, another moonwalker, came back and became an artist. You know, we've sent military personnel and scientists to space, and they've come back religious, philosophers, or you know, people who want to protect Earth. But what happens when we send Joe Bloggs, you know, the house husband from Leeds that we talk about? What happens when we send that woman in the village in India? What happens when we send people from all walks of life? I was working in Uganda last December, and my driver, Robert, 30 years old, never been in an airplane, even though he's an airport taxi driver, loves space because he grew up under the stars. He grew up in rural Uganda, away from all light pollution. Imagine if you sent Robert to space. How would that, you know, how would Robert go back to Uganda and communicate with his community what it was like in space and why space matters in a way that a white Western astronaut cannot, you know? So if we're going to succeed as a species, we need to all be in this together. So Space for Humanity is my favorite organization because it's trying to do that. It's trying to make space accessible to as many people as possible. And we need that. We need, because it doesn't just give people, you know, an experience, but it benefits life on Earth, and it transforms life on Earth because more people understand why the mission matters, because we are in this together. And if we're going to succeed in space, it can't just be one niche group growing. We need to have people from all walks of life, all races, all skin colors, all communities. You know, we've got to get everyone on board with this. It can't just be an elitist thing.
I think after that, Space for Humanity is now going to be one of my top favorite space organizations.
And we're having a launch party on Saturday for the Crew One launch, SpaceX Crew One launch. Loads of incredible guests. I'm hosting. We've got Alan Stern, who was in charge of the New Horizons mission to Pluto and is now himself going to become an astronaut. We've got a woman called Loretta Whiteside, who is heavily involved with Virgin Galactic. She's a future astronaut with them. We've got a guy called Frank White, who is a, how do I even describe Frank? I would say academic, Harvard philosopher, and he's the guy behind the term the overview effect, which is the term to describe how people are transformed when they actually see the Earth from space. So yeah, if you want to join us for our party, you can do that this Saturday as well. But in case you're watching this after Saturday, you can't join us, I'm sorry.
No, it's something, it's great because whenever you talk to someone about space, you're like, oh yeah, but I'm not really ever going to be able to understand what it's like to be an astronaut, because for like 99.9999% of people, they're like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to become an astronaut. But it's not about becoming an astronaut. Understanding space is not about just going to space. so what Space for Humanity is doing is it's like giving everyone a chance,
Yeah.
as you said, to connect with it.
It's
And
leveling the playing field, because
yeah,
let's be honest, unless you're born in certain countries and, you know, are from a certain
yeah.
type of
You're
community,
never going to make it. Yeah.
yeah, but it's leveling the playing field, because we need to do that. We need to level the playing field, because we go to space for all of humanity, and we go to space for Earth, because much of what we do in space is about benefiting life on Earth. It's not about just hunting for aliens or trying to colonize other worlds. It's not about that at all. It's about curiosity has driven us there, but we use the platform of space to benefit life on Earth. You should apply.
I would definitely look into that. I
All
would
of you apply. And what was the other question? My favorite space mission, Voyager. And I write about Voyager in the introduction to Look Up Our Story with the Stars, because what I love about Voyager is that, you know, Voyager 1 and 2 are the first two things to actually leave the solar system. They're out there in interstellar space now, which is just insane. But 3.5 or so many million years from now, or billion years, even whenever, our sun will die. We'll die. Earth will die. Nothing we've ever loved, or, you know, nothing will exist in our solar system anymore. And that's very sad. We don't know how humanity would have progressed by then, but it's a long, long way away. But the Voyagers will still be out there in space. So they are likely to spend an eternity out there in the vastness of the cosmos. And in about, I think it's roughly 20,000 years' time, one of the Voyagers will pass a star that we can see in the night sky. So a star that humanity has looked up at since the dawn of our existence. Finally, a piece of humanity will reach the stars. And that's what I love about Voyager, is that there are cosmic messages in a bottle, and when our Earth doesn't exist, when our sun doesn't exist, they will still be out there. There'll still be that relic to human civilization. And that, to me, is just, even if we don't continue to explore space, which obviously we will, but to know that there's those two pieces of humanity, needles in a cosmic haystack, out there in the vastness of the universe forever, it gives me hope, because it, you know, there's going to be some relic of us left when everything else is gone. And I just think it's how can you beat Voyager? How can you beat, you know, the first mission to actually see all of the planets apart from Pluto? Of course, Pluto was a planet at that time. You know, how can you beat that? It's just all of the outer planets, I should say. It's just incredible. And to know that they will outlive us, and that they will pass by stars that humans have looked up at for an eternity, is just incredible. It just blows my mind, and it's quite humbling.
Yeah, to anyone tuning in who doesn't know what Voyager is, it's basically a satellite that we sent, I think it was in the 60s or 70s.
1977.
And it's the furthest man-made satellite that is left our solar system, as you said. And I just Googled it, and right now it's about 150 AU. And me and Sarah were discussing this before we came online. And
no, you shame me.
AU is the distance between the Earth and the Sun, which is about 150 million kilometers.
Thank you.
The fact that Voyager 1 is now 150 times that distance between the Earth and the Sun.
That's math I can't do, like, not in my head. Like, I used to be able to do that in my head, but yeah, I thank you, because just before we came on live, I was explaining how I was giving a talk at the Hay Book Festival last year. I'd literally flown in from America. It was a day trip, so incredibly jet lagged. We're woken up in Hay, this beautiful village on the border of Wales, was giving a talk about my last book, The Space Race, and kid put their hand up at the end, quite a large audience, I'd say a good few hundred people in there, and the kid put their hand up at the end, and they were like, how far is the Earth from the Sun? And I was like, one astronomical unit. I don't actually know that in kilometers, because that's not kind of what I do. And luckily, a guy called Tom Williams, who was in my tutor group when I was at Leicester University, he was in the audience with his son, and he was able to put his hand up and answer the question for me and save my embarrassment. But yeah, I don't get me on the exact distance of things, but I love the fact that we can't even comprehend the numbers of how far.
Well, here's another stat for anyone who's interested in this, is where Voyager 1 is right now. If you were to travel at the speed of light to get to Voyager 1, it would take you about 20 hours, which is nothing compared to the size of the universe. But if you're traveling at the speed of light, between 2 clicks, you can fly around the Earth, I think, 7 times. So imagine that speed you're going at that speed, and it's still going to take you 20 hours to get to where Voyager 1 is. So that was Sarah's favorite space mission. And I'm sure it will be many more people's favorite space mission after that conversation.
What's your favorite space mission?
Voyager 1 definitely is.
Yeah,
Voyager 1 and 2. I still remember learning about Voyager in GCSE.
I didn't do Voyager in my GCSEs.
No, I still remember.
I even did astronomy GCSE and I didn't do Voyager. I've been cheated.
I didn't believe it. I was like, and I still remember the picture of like it's a picture of a male human and a female that they've sent in it, and it's something like philosophical, like it's like a message like we are here or something. And I still remember reading that. And I was like, it's like out of a sci-fi movie.
It really is. Do you know, fun fact, the Beatles were approached to have their music put on the Voyager Golden Record, and they turned it down because they wanted to be paid for it.
Oh.
I know. Big mistake. Big mistake, big opportunity. But yeah, I love that you love Voyager also. I think that's the part, because we always think about human spaceflight and we always think about sending humans in space and astronauts in space and then hearing their stories, but actually robotic missions inspire as well, and robots can go where humans can't go yet, and they're almost like our eyes and ears into the vastness of the cosmos. So I love that Voyager is your inspiration as well, and I love that a mission which is more than 40 years old is continuing to inspire. I just love that.
Well, we've still got loads of questions that we haven't answered from the audience, so thank you.
Bring them on. I'll try and keep my answers short.
Keep them coming in. Chris Bullock, thank you for tuning in.
Hi Chris, I know you from Twitter.
Asking, what are your top tips for looking up and stargazing from home?
That's a great question. My top tips would be, it depends on your light pollution, because obviously I'm in London, so it depends whether you're in the countryside or you're at home. You're at home, you're in the city. But my top tips would be, firstly, stars twinkle, planets do not. So stars are a single point of light because they're very, very far away, so they get distorted in our atmosphere, whereas planets, although much smaller, they're nearer and they're reflecting light from the sun, so you haven't got that single point of light, so they don't twinkle as much. So that would be my first tip, how to tell the difference between a star and a planet you see in the night sky. My second tip would be, don't put any pressure on yourself. You don't need any fancy equipment. You just need to be able to look up. Just get a good app or follow myself on Twitter or other people on Twitter who talk about space exploration, and just make the time for it, because we all get stuck to these, glued to one of these. I'm just as guilty as the next person. And this year's been a horrible year for many people and a stressful year. So my top tip would be, just do it. Just get out there and look up at the night sky. And there's a trick called averted vision as well, where if you're struggling to see something, you look at the object and then you look away and then look back at it, and your eyes can focus better on it. But my top tips would be just look up. It doesn't matter if you don't know the names of the constellations or the names of the stars you're looking at, but just look up and feel wonder and awe. And I hope that answers your question, Chris. Hope that answered your question, Chris. And if you have any follow-up, just tweet me.
Great. Also, Chris, I'd actually recommend you to go back on our YouTube channel, and on Tuesday, every other Tuesday, we have a roundup with Nick Howes and Terry Mosley, who are both both space experts and astronomers. And at the end of every other Tuesday, our section, we have this bit called "Look Up," what to look out for. So go out and it's every 2 weeks. So go out and see what we talked about then. Harry Hartley, next question. Hi Harry, thank you for tuning in.
Hi Harry, I recognise you from Twitter as well.
It's all your fans here tonight. Hi Sarah, Harry here from Hull. Looking forward to the launch of the Crew 1 Dragon module at the weekend, as are we at Space Store, and you hosting for Space Humanity. Have you tried to apply to be the first female on the moon?
I think that's going to be an American astronaut. I'm not an American citizen. Hi, Chris. Chris is just saying thanks for answering my question. So oh my gosh, I would love that. Imagine being able to. So I have framed this is my spare room we're in at the moment, but in my my lounge, I have framed the Apollo 8 image taken from orbit around the moon, where you can see, Earthrise. We all know that image, and you can hold out your thumb and cover the Earth with your thumb. And I think to be on the moon would be incredibly frightening. There's no air to breathe on the moon. You're relying on your space suit and your technology. But just, I don't know if I could get my head around being able to cover all of humanity, more than 7 billion of us, all the history of humanity with my thumb. But I would love to one day go to space. Never say never, how things are going to change in the next few decades. The moon would be incredible, but the best thing about being on the moon would be looking back at Earth. But also as well, actually orbiting around the moon. So when you're on the far side of the moon, and seeing all the stars, looking where you hear a lot about, when you talk about the Apollo missions, you hear a lot about the commander and the lunar module pilot, of course, walked on the surface, but the command module pilot remained alone orbiting the moon. But they were never alone, because they had this, when they're on the far side, away from all light and humanity, they were kept company by a star, a sky full of stars, a vast amount of stars. And that was that to me I think the view would be more incredible than the experience of being on the moon. But what I'm excited about and optimistic about is that at some point this decade we could look up at the moon and humans will be there. And that's just incredible, because I wasn't born when the moon landings happened, and actually the majority of people on Earth probably weren't around now when the moon landings happened. But to be able to look up at the night sky, because it's amazing just seeing the International Space Station pass by, but to be able to go look up at the night sky and to look at the moon and know that there's humans there, and they can beam back pictures from the moon of the Earth in almost real time, that would be incredible.
Yeah,
but maybe one day for the moon.
It's a crazy thought, and it would just help put things into perspective as well when you look back at Earth and see how small we are. Because sometimes standing on the Earth, you don't realize it, but we're tiny.
We are. We think we're grand and important, but in the vastness of the universe, we're about a speck. It's not to say we're insignificant, but we just great oceans which took explorers, which were the great frontiers, and now they're nothing. Then it's just it's almost too much for the human brain.
It is. Ground-based space, thank you for being involved once again. His question
again, ground-based space.
On the subject of looking up at the sky, I highly recommend Stellarium. It's a great piece of software and perfect for astronomy of all levels. So if you're interested, if you're a computer nerd and you're interested in space, go download Stellarium. I might have used it before. I think it's where you can travel through the universe with that
sounds awesome. I'm going to download that. Thank you so much for that tip. I love it when people see. I'm not, I had a telescope as a kid, but my advice is always get binoculars, because you can carry them around with you, and sometimes when it's a telescope it almost becomes a bit of a chore because you've got to set it up, and I feel like if things are easy to do, you're more likely to do it. So my advice is more just do it. It's great that, because sometimes space, and it's changing, but astronomy as well can be pretty intimidating, because it sometimes can just be a certain group of people, and they know all the facts and they know all the technology, and you might not know as much. That's why I just think you just need to look up. You just just enjoy the beauty of what it is. And also spotthestation.nasa.gov is a great website if you want to track the International Space Station, because we get some fantastic International Space Station passes in the UK, and I'm sure we'll get some great ones this winter, and it's not as if anyone's really going anywhere at the moment. So they're the lucky ones aboard the space station.
Yeah, I hope they're COVID secure.
Yeah, they are. They have to quarantine before they go. And we had first astronaut vote, or the astronaut Karen Nimberg. I can't pronounce her last name. I think that's correct, but she actually voted from space in the US election, which is incredible.
Awesome. Another question from Martin Day on YouTube. Thank you, Martin.
Hi, Martin.
Hi, Sarah and Laksh. Martin Day from Western Supermare here. I'm curious what both of you think about people willing to sign up for a one-way trip to Mars, and would you?
I love how this question's for you as well. I think you should answer it first, Laksh.
Would I sign up for a one-way trip to Mars? Yes. because I feel like, okay, so this is something I've genuinely thought about in the past.
Did you apply for Mars One?
Sorry?
Did you apply for Mars One?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I did. No, but my university lecturer always used to say that if we go to Mars, it's going to be a one-way trip anyway. And I was like, and all the science behind it of why it's going to be a one-way trip. Not sure if that's true anymore.
Yeah, it's a problem with space. Like everything becomes out of date. Like,
Exactly, especially at the rate we're moving now, everything
yeah,
does become out of date pretty quickly. But if there was a one-way trip to Mars, I think I would say yes, simply because what you're doing for humanity is crazy. Like no one has ever done it before. It's like the first man on the moon. No one would ever say no to that. Yes, they got to come back, but I am purely saying yes because of the fact I've seen Martian like 17 times. Um, and I just do it because it's something that's never been done before, and it would make life like different to what it is and what
that's
we know
very
it.
true.
It's like you're starting from zero. Like there's literally nothing. There's no society, there's no infrastructure, there's nothing literally. And to be able to start afresh will be crazy. So I'd say yes.
What if you change your mind halfway there and you're seeing the Earth getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you know you can't go back?
I say that, but once I made the decision, I kind of have to go with it. The hardest part would be saying bye to humanity and like your family,
All of humanity.
all of humanity. Yeah.
But
As long as I'm sure I'd have someone with me, right? I hope.
yeah, but you know, would you like to stay with the same person on a
It's not
planet
good.
for the rest of your life?
All of humanity I'm taking with me.
See, I feel like so Mars One was certainly an interesting project. I feel like throughout history, exploration's traditionally been a one-way trip. It's only recently with space that it's started to become a return trip. You look at the settlers who went to America, for example. That was a one-way trip. They were just going, you know, and it's almost only with space it's been a return trip. I do think it's more likely to be return trips now with Mars, and when we eventually go there. I think Mars One's interesting. I think obviously it didn't pan out as they wanted, but I don't have a problem with these grandiose ideas, no matter how ridiculous they are or how much the media jumps onto them, even if they're not that correct, because at the end of the day, it's inspiring people about space and it's getting people talking about space. So I think the idea is probably one which wouldn't happen, because I think as a society, we wouldn't be able to cope with the fact we're just sending someone away and they won't be able to come back.
Yeah.
But I think talking about it is always a good thing, and organizations who have ideas about that is a good thing. Would I go to Mars on a one-way trip? I don't know. I don't know. It's, you know, I always like to think Earth is the best planet because it's got everything we need to not only survive but to thrive. I'd love to see Mars. I'd love to, like, I know as a kid, I truly believed 2020 was the year that humans were going to be landing on the surface of the moon, surface of Mars. And I was like, whoa, I'll be in my 30s by then. I'll be really old. And I thought I could be the first person on Mars. And I used to imagine it so much. And then obviously 2020 is not exactly like we imagined it. But just imagine being that person, you know, landing on the surface of Mars. You've been in zero gravity for at least 6 months, so your body's going to have to get used to a different gravity field, because obviously gravity is less on Mars but more than it is on the moon. So you're trying to get used to that. You eventually get well. Perhaps you had some sort of anti-gravity device on your trip over, and then you open the spacecraft hatch and you walk down the ladder and you can see the pink sky and the rocky, arid landscape, which looks kind of like Earth but like nothing we've ever seen before. And then you set foot on the Martian soil, and I just think that it's just an incredible moment. And you see the blue sunsets on Mars, and you see this terrain, you know, which, you know, Mars in the past was once much warmer and wetter, we think, and human life, all life on Earth could have come from Mars. We just don't know yet. And to see, you know, that next step for humanity, and that piece of our history, and our planet's history, would be incredible, but also terrifying to know that when you look up at the night sky, and we can see Mars at the moment, Mars looks great in the night sky. It starts in the east, moves across to the south, and to know that you could be on the surface of Mars and you could look up and see Earth looking like a star, I think that would freak me out. And I think it would freak most people out. But yeah, it's
what if you get a free Tesla to go with it?
No.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your questions. Keep them coming in. Let's talk a little bit more about the book.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you this actually, and it's, of course, you've had so much experience in the space industry, but when you were doing like your research for the book, what did you come across that you were like, hang on, wow, I didn't really know this, and maybe you were surprised by it?
That's a good question. I think the one thing which so dedication, determination, and sacrifice is a chapter in the book which looks at the human stories. And I always knew I wanted to write about Gus Grissom. I remember learning about Gus Grissom as a kid and being like devastated by his life story, but also hugely inspired. And then I wanted to include a Challenger astronaut. I'd always been inspired by Judy Resnick growing up, so I assumed I would write about her. She was an incredible woman. She was one of the second American women in space. She was tragically killed on the Challenger accident. But I started researching around the Challenger crew, and the story of Christa McAuliffe has been told a lot. But then I kind of went down this archive wormhole about Christa, and you always think first she was the teacher, and watching these videos about her, and you realise how extraordinary she was as a human being. Like, she was selected from thousands of teachers for that Teacher in Space program. She was incredible. Her mission was to show that the common man, the ordinary human, is contributing to history. When she was a social studies teacher, she would get her students to go out and interview people in the local community, because her thing was that military history, for example, can be recorded easily. The history of the elites can be recorded easily, but the common man, the ordinary person, is often forgotten in history. And her plan was to write a journal in space. And this is the 1980s, long before social media. So her journal would have been the first ever record of an ordinary person, as she described herself, doing an extraordinary thing, going to space and having that experience. And I think, sorry, that's my phone. I think for me, this tour de force, this, how extraordinary Christa McAuliffe was, really surprised me, because I thought I knew about Christa McAuliffe. I'm sure pretty much all of you watching this know the story of Challenger, and Christa's probably that, by the fact she was a teacher and a spaceflight participant, was the most well known out of the crew. And just researching Christa, I was angered and saddened by what a loss to humanity it was to lose Christa, and just blown away by just how incredible she was, and how she, and it goes, I guess, to what I want to do in life. You want to show that space relates to all of us. It's not just for the, the elite or the military or scientists, whatever. And what she was trying to achieve in making space for the ordinary person really blew my mind. It's one of my favorite pieces in the book. Like, it's really tragic. But if you get time, just like watch old footage about Christa, like go down an archive wormhole. And some incredible stuff there. I think online as well, you can get her interview with NASA, because they filmed all the interviews for the finalists. And yeah, I always knew she was extraordinary, but I didn't realize how extraordinary. And I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn from her. So that, and I know it's not a science story, but that personal story of just how tragic Challenger was, but just how, to almost like paraphrase Ronald Reagan in the speech afterwards, we remember them not for how they died, but the manner in which they lived their lives. And often with Challenger, we remember the accident, but we forget about the people behind it. And I think Christa was truly a credit to the human race, and it's my honor to tell, have a small part in continuing her legacy in my book. And I think that surprised me most.
Oh, so inspiring to hear. And remember, if you want to get your hands on Look Up, Our Story with the Stars, you can head over to Space Store's website. We've got it available for you to purchase. We should also have it in store if you're in and around the Didcot area. And if you want to read all of those stories and more, head over to the website and get your hands on it. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much to everyone who's watched this live. Thank you so much to everyone who will watch this in the future. 2020 is a tough one, but things are going to get better. And just, keep looking up, keep dreaming big. And yeah, the best is yet to come.
It definitely is. And once again, remember, if you want to get your hands on Look Up Our Story with the Stars, go get your hands on it. And another reminder is that Space Store has been helping out the local community in Didcot since the first lockdown happened, and we could really do with your help. So we're actually doing a fundraiser if you can support that, please do head over on our YouTube channel. We have a specific video dedicated to it, and there's a description in the link of that video. Go check it out if you have, if you want to support Space Store. That would be really appreciated. Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I'm sure everyone who's tuned in tonight has enjoyed it, and everyone who's gonna watch this later on. Once again, if you have any questions, go check out Sarah Cruddas' social media channels. Check out our social media channels as well. Subscribe if you aren't already, and let the journey continue.
Thank you so much, Lux, and thank you everyone so much for watching.
All right then, Sarah, have a good evening. I hope you guys stay safe, take care, and let's hope lockdown number 2 is also over very, very soon. And we'll see you guys later.